Taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous hope. And the same word, this guy was used to Israel, and so God is just doing, hey, what goes around comes around. You say it's going to come to Israel? Nope, it's going to come to you. Speaking to reporters Saturday after meeting with French Prime Minister François Fillon, he said, France is involved too. He said that, why do that? It's a burdensome stone. Get away. He said that a new war will have dangerous repercussions not only in the Middle East, but also on the international level. Of course it will. Of course it will. Connect the dots. God warned Damascus would end upon a ruinous heap. Syria is telling us that this is going to happen, but the Syrians don't realize the ruinous heap is coming upon them as part of God's curse found in Genesis 12:3. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. What is that covenant? The Abrahamic covenant, folks. Here's another example of the leaders God warned us about are saying the exact same things God said they would say. Continuing on, the cities of Aurora are forsaken. They will be flocks to lie down in, and there will be no one to frighten them. The fortified city will disappear from Ephraim, and the sovereignty from Damascus, and the remnant of Aram, and they will be like the glory of the sons of Israel, declares the Lord of hosts. But I want to tell you, what Israel does to Damascus is not a it's not a preemptive, it's not a, what's the word for when you go first? It's not a
initial.
It's not
offensive. They're not the aggressor.
They're not the ones that do it first. All right? They're not. They respond. But the first response of Syria, look at what the result is of the first response of Syria and Israel. And it'll come about in that day that the glory of Jacob will fade. The fatness of his flesh will become lean. It will be even like the reaper gathering standing grain as his arm harvests the ears, or it'll be like one gleaning ears of grain in the valley of Rephaim. Gleanings will be left like the shaking of an olive tree, 2 or 3 olives on the topmost bough, 4 or 5 on the branches of a fruitful tree. It's like all the fruit comes down. Why? Because there's bomb blasts all over the place from all these rockets. Declares the Lord, the God of Israel. In that day, man will have regard for his Maker, and his eyes will look to the Holy One of Israel, and he will not have regard for the altars, the work of his hands, nor will he look to that which his fingers have made, even the Asherim and the incense stands. But the harvest, did you see this? The harvest will be a heap in a day of sickliness and incurable pain. Harvest will be a heap. I mean, if you can just imagine this was a picture of farmland just being cratered and blown up in a day of sickliness. Everybody in Israel is issued gas masks these days. They all. Why? Because these bombs are not just going to blow up, but they're going to be sending gas over there, and so it'll be a day of sickliness and incredible pain. I had some incredible shots of people hit with bomb shrapnel, which I chose not to put on there. Thank you very much. All right, the last. The uproar of many peoples who roar like the roaring of the seas, and the rumbling of nations who rush on like the rumbling of mighty waters. Nations rumble on like the rumbling of many waters. But he will rebuke them, and they will flee far away and be chased like chaff in the mountains before the wind, or like whirling before a gale. And here's the interesting verse. At evening time, behold, there is terror. Before morning, they are no more. Such will be the portion of those who plunder us and the lot of those who pillage us. You see that? That's what is happening to Damascus. It'll happen in one evening. They're going to be wiped out. Never again. Damascus is thought to be the longest inhabited city in the world. 4,300 years. There are records of it going way back. There's never been a time when Damascus has been wiped out. But what does God say right here? It'll be no more. Syria will be no more. So then I want to show you this. Now, we were talking about last week about the Psalm 83 Confederates. So Syria is down, the bottom of Syria. Syrians in the north. That's one of the Confederates. We saw what happened to them in that war. Look at the Ishmaelites, the Saudis. All right? The Ishmaelites. Let me see if I have the map here. Well, it's the Saudis. And this thing always bugs me. Remember this? This is the story of, of Obama, and he goes and meets the king of Saudi Arabia, and he bows down. It's just.
He denies that.
I know he denies it. I know he does, but the pictures are there. But let me show you this that I got from the internet this morning. All right? Got this article from the internet this morning. Congress, by the way, is in recess right now. Critics slam Obama administration for hiding a massive Saudi arms deal. Well, how is that going to change the balance of power in the Psalm 83 war? By Matthew Moss, November 19th, 2010, the Obama administration has quietly forged ahead with its proposal to sell $60 billion worth of fighter jets and attack helicopters to Saudi Arabia, unhampered by Congress, despite question raised in legislative inquiries and in internal congressional report about the wisdom of the deal. Another concern, Weiner added, is the potential for the weapon sale to erode Israel's military edge in the Middle East, an advantage the U.S. has fostered as an essential element of its Middle East policy for decades. A second letter prepared by Berman and Representative Elena Ross-Lehtinen, the Republican expected to take charge of the Foreign Affairs Committee in January and signed by 196 other members, raised similar questions about the proposal. While we understand the administration has worked productively with Israel to address Israel's security concerns, we'd like to know how these arms sales will affect Israel's military edge, the letter said. So we're talking about Israel. This is the group that composes the confederacy of the Psalm 83 war. Here's Saudi Arabia, the Ishmaelites, right here. And they've just been given a deal for $60 billion of weapons. Why?
How can that be?
How can that be?
How can you get away with it?
Because Congress wasn't in session. All right, so we've talked about Ammon. Here's Syria up here. This is Salmon and
probably a presidential
Ammon right here.
acclamation.
And these other nations, and we'll talk about them in just a second. All right, so let's go on.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, this is an interesting from Missler's April 2010 Koinonia House newsletters. All the members of the Confederacy detailed in Psalm 83 are Muslims. Each of them is the subject of specific judgments which are detailed in Ezekiel 25 through 32. I didn't even get to those. However, the principal issue of the entire episode is to make a specific point, that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the most high over all the earth. Not Allah, but Jehovah is the name above all over all the earth. Psalm 83:18. His name alone is Jehovah, not Allah, the moon god, and the Abrahamic covenant has not been repealed. If this view is correct, it suggests that a very dramatic prelude to the events of Ezekiel 38. Number one, Israel is regathered in the land. Has that happened? Yes, it will happen even more, because more and more Jews are going to go back to Israel. There's 15 million over all the earth, and God says He's going to regather them all.
It's happening.
It's happening now. Ancient cities are rebuilt and inhabited. Happens? Has happened? Yes, and it will continue to do so. The settlements are going to go on. You know, that's the big problem right now is whenever Israel builds more settlements, then all the nations around it, they don't want that to happen. They meet Muslim Arab resistance. That's happening now. Israel establishes an army for defense. See, that's what's different about the Psalm 83 war. It's Israel's own army that defends. In Ezekiel 38, who defeats the war? Who defeats everybody that comes in? God does. Here, it's Israel's own defense force that defeats in Psalm 83. That's why we think it's a different war. Number 5, adjacent Muslim nations confederate. That's Psalm 83, 1 through 8, where it talks about those nations that we saw in that pentagram, right? All those nations are there. The Confederacy is committed to the destruction of Israel. Duh. The war starts between the Confederacy and Israel. It hasn't happened yet, but I was interested in what it says. The days are coming, declares the Lord, I'll cause a trumpet blast of war to be reared against Rabbah or the sons of Ammon. What's that? Ammon is Jordan. Jordan is there, and it will become a desolate heap, and her towns will be set on fire, and then Israel will take possession of his possessors, says the Lord. That's 49:2, 49:8. Flee away, turn back, dwell in the depths, O inhabitants of Dedan, for I will bring the disaster of Esau upon him at the time I punish him. I think that's Saudis, Ishmaelites. I have to go back to the map. And then behold, one will come up like a lion from the thickets of the Jordan against a perennial watered pasture. For in an instant I will make him run away from it, and whoever is chosen I shall appoint over it. For who is like me? Who will summon me into court, and who then is the shepherd who can stand against me? So anyway, this is they feel these verses are talking about the start of that Psalm 83 war. Title is regained, My People Israel. And then Israel decisively defeats the Confederacy Israel becomes an exceedingly great army. Israel takes prisoners of war. The region is reshaped. Folks, Israel is going to get